What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Brutal Planet Comics. I'm your host, Dre, the Brew Daniels. It's another glorious day because we have another episode of the Indie Corner where I sit down with everybody from the influence community, writers, artists, directors, producers. Doesn't matter if you're in the game, I want to talk to you. And today we got ourselves a first-time guest and a very, very special guest indeed. He is the director of Bad Mosquito Productions. Give it up, everybody, for Ben Mainard. What is going on, my friend? I'm good. Let me see if my camera can stay in focus for a second. Whatever. Technology, who cares? Oh, Ben, well, I'm so very happy that you come from across the pond to come and holler at me for a little bit to tell me about all the great and fantastic things you guys are working on over there at Bad Mosquito. There I am. Now I'm fancy. At Bad Mosquito Productions.
We can see you now.
Yeah. But before we get into all that stuff, let's get to know you a little bit, Ben. Who are you? Where'd you come from? How did we get here?
Well, as you said, yeah. So across the pond, I'm over here in the UK. I would say I'm a content creator. So I'm a filmmaker. I kind of do posters, one sheets. I do social media content. I film live events. There's pretty much a lot of things that I don't do really. I dabble in VFX and do bits and bobs like that. So yeah, I kind of a bit of a jack of all trades really.
That's really, really cool. So before you became a director, did you go to school, film school, anything like that before you decided to dive into that aspect?
No, so it was literally, so again, my sort of schooling years, I'm a man of a certain age, 80s born, 90s sort of kid. It was schooling over here was kind of, the film industry and things, wasn't really a big sort of thing you could get into. Obviously it existed, but it wasn't anything in schools that they would teach you and say, well, you could become a filmmaker, you could go work on it, which is crazy considering, we have Pinewood Studios and a lot of the big studios.
Exactly.
Here. But I think unless you're in the area, you don't really sort of pick up on those things. So I was always creative, loved drawing, loved comics, all that kind of good stuff. Basically kind of watched films. So really my sort of film background comes from just watching movies, knowing what I liked, looking at, taking in the angles, thinking, oh, that's cool. Oh, I'd have done that a bit differently. And then I just kind of, did usual jobs. Pay them bills, right?
Of
you've got
course.
to pay the bills. So I used to do the regular jobs, and then in one of the jobs I was in, I kind of got into a bit of filmmaking. We kind of did I used to do posters for the company and stuff like that. It's just for fun. And then we kind of made a video, and that kind of caught my bug. Suddenly, my creativity, which had been drawing and comics and other things, suddenly I was like, oh, what's this? I kind of enjoy this kind of filmmaking. And then we did regular sort of things for the company, and then we started going to Comic Cons and filming Comic Cons and doing some live events, and the bug really took hold. And I got in with a TV company, and did a little bit with them on some TV shows. That kind of led into films and doing some bits of films, and now I'm kind of doing it myself. And I've always been working on other people's projects, and now it's time to kind of start doing some of my own projects, and that's where the kind of link with Hades comes in. So
that is actually really, really cool, because I remember when I was young, we were pretty much cut from the same stitching. Big comic book guy, obviously, worked in the industry for years. Comic book guy. I was into cartoons and movies, films. At one point, I was considered a cinephile back in the day. I used to go to the theater like almost every day, no matter what film it was. Like, hey, I'm going to go see it. Yes, it's my midnight summer dream. I'm seeing it. I don't care. I was a connoisseur of the media. So I can absolutely appreciate your origins when it comes to that, especially that creative bug. So before you created your own company, you're saying you were working for other companies. Were you a script writer for anything else, or for comics or movies or television shows?
So no, I mean, comics, weirdly, it was kind of eluded me. I'm kind of looking to expand into that kind of realm of things now. Obviously, I'm sort of joined forces with ASAP Imagination. They obviously comic publishers and they make their own comics. So that's something I want to look into doing now more so. So I always kind of wrote things, had ideas, put together sort of spitball ideas and things like that. It was more camera work. I kind of did a lot of camera work, dabbled in VFX.
Okay.
And then that was kind of how I got into it, because people saw what I'd done on YouTube and other things and some of the events, and I sort of worked more freelance for companies rather than directly involved. So yeah, no sort of real script writing as such, but it was mainly kind of more of an artistic point,
Okay.
and sort of framing cameras, that kind of thing.
The man behind the camera. That's always been your MO. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
that's cool. That's
a face for radio.
I like that. I like that. I did a lot of podcasts years ago, back when like when, what was those things? Audiobooks were first getting started, and I used to it was a buddy of mine and said, like, you have a voice for radio. I said, yeah, how am I supposed to get into that? And he was like, hey, I got these scripts that I'm doing nothing with. Like, hey, can you just do something with it? And I just started doing stuff with it. And he was like, hey, this is good. And then he started doing other things. I'm like, hey, I can't commit to all that. But then I end up doing other voice work too. So I know how it starts, and then you just start shooting up. And that's awesome, Ben. That's awesome. I like that. That's really cool. So let's talk about your company a little bit. Let's talk about Bad Mosquito Films. Now, granted, first of all, that name is awesome. So let's get a little bit into the origin. Where did this name come from? Where did the studio come from? How did you end up rocking and rolling with this?
So yeah, when I sort of decided I was going to start doing my own thing and kind of leading on, I kind of had a film partner that I worked with originally when we first sort of started up, and then we wanted to sort of do something different, and we kind of thinking about the different companies that we like looking at, and how we call it kind of works. And I thought I want something that's kind of impactful and kind of you say it and it's like people think of it instantly, how it kind of relates. So I'm sort of thinking of these names together, and Bad just sort of stayed in my brain.
Always does.
Bad Robot, and there's other kind of things, things like that. So I kind of had that, and then a friend of mine actually, a job I was on, said, "Oh, what about Mosquito?" And then because then B and M is actually my initials, Ben Mainard. So I was like, that kind of weird. And the minute he said it, kind of Bad Mosquito, I was like, oh, Bad Mosquito. And the first thing that popped in my head was an intro at the beginning of a film, and a mosquito flying around and somebody whoosh, hitting it, splat, and then the thing. And I thought, I kind of like that. So that was kind of how I started it. And then again, the emblem, the logo with the kind of warning sign and the mosquito on there with the blood and everything, all came from that initial idea. So I was like, yeah, it's like yourself, probably when you hear an idea and it just sticks, you're like, that's it, that's the one I'm going with.
Absolutely, that is. And you are BM. That's cool. Oh, see, this is why I asked those questions, because you never know where the creative process comes from. Because like when I saw like Bad Mosquito, I'm like, who the heck comes up with that? That is awesome. I like that. That's really good.
I've had a few comments when I was on another podcast and somebody put through, is there such thing as a good mosquito? And I was like, well, that's up for debate. Somebody who studies mosquitoes, maybe they might think mosquitoes are quite good, but I think the general consensus is they are bad.
Yes, I'm inclined to
go with bad.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that. I hate mosquitoes. I was just cutting my lawn earlier today, and I had to go and get my bug off going. I'm like, I don't want no part of y'all foolishness. Get away from me. That's awesome. So when did you start Bad Mosquito? When did it debut? The studio?
So I think probably around initially like YouTube, I think about 2016 we kind of started and kind of doing some bits. We had YouTube and we were doing other things. And again, I was more of a behind the scenes, less of actually putting things out there myself and more doing things for other people.
Nice.
And then kind of did YouTube, and then it's a weird one for me because again, I apart from talking to wonderful people like yourself, I'm not really a face of it as much because we do a lot of production-y stuff.
Yeah.
I'm usually the other side of the camera doing bits and bobs. So there's not really a figurehead as such. So it's like when it comes to content, it's a weird one to do because I like motion posters. Again, being a film fan, much like you said, cinephile, absolutely love movies. So I do motion posters, and I do my own versions of current posters and things like that are all on my kind of social media.
Gotcha.
So do that kind of thing. It's a weird one to do, making content and making my own stuff. Again, it was always more of a focus than other people's, which is why I'm sort of driving out. Like I need to kind of do my own stuff. I've got a stack of scripts, kind of like building up and all these ideas for things and comics and whatnot. And I'm like, right, I need to kind of put myself out there and put some of my creativity out for other people to hopefully enjoy too.
That's absolutely correct, and I myself can relate to that. For many years before I started my own company, if I stopped being out of focus for 1 second, before I started my own company, I used to write a lot of smaller scripts for other people, other comics, other newspaper snippets. Like I used to do a lot of that stuff, and I enjoyed it, of course, obviously, but I wanted to have my own vision put on paper, screen, whatever. I wanted my own vision to be put there, and it's definitely a major undertaking when I did so, but it was definitely worth it, and I can relate to that. 100%, Ben. Having your vision being put in front of you is a whole different ball game because it came from your brain. So it makes it that much more impactful. Absolutely. So Ben, here's my next question. What other projects have you done with Bad Mosquito? Have you made any other short films? Have you made any movies, TV shows? What have you been working on?
So yeah, I've worked on a couple of other, as I said, other people's projects. So a couple of sort of short films, some sort of proper kind of budget films. There's like Swipe Right was one I kind of worked on. I'm Charlie Walker, which came out sort of last year. Had kind of Mike Coulter as the lead in it. There was another great cast, Sophia Fredericks. A really good sort of casting crew. So I got in on the ground level with them, and kind of I did the poster work for that, and I did a little bit of kind of effects in the film. Ended up doing like with the sort of main title card of the film, which was really good. So that was a big sort of a real proud moment for me.
Absolutely.
And then again, other people, like there's a few sort of comic companies I've done, again, motion posters, that kind of the same thing. Worked with sort of Renee Geerlings and kind of Tyler Main on his comic series that he's got, The Last Spartan. Done a couple of motion graphics for them. I've done some other stuff. Man and Witch was another good project. Was a good sort of pride piece for me. It was working with Tammy Stronach from The Neverending Story. She played the childlike empress.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, she did a kind of 80s fantasy film called Man and Witch, which came out sort of this year, sort of last year. And I did a bit of work sort of behind the scenes with some design stuff for her. And that was really fun because, again, having sort of grown up watching her,
yeah, of course,
and then,
what an honor!
Her, like you and I are talking now,
that's crazy.
It's great fun.
Yeah,
it's awesome. So I think it's one of the best bits of the job is you kind of get to meet people you've seen on the screen, and kind of then you get to know them a bit personally, which is kind of really good. So so I've done a few sort of TV shows, or as I said, worked with a TV company before, and we did a comic. It was like a Comic-Con show that I then directed the whole thing. So we were going around to different events, and the kind of idea was take a Comic-Con itself and condense it into like a TV show. So have a sort of presenter, interview guests, show the cosplayers, show the cars and the props that are there, that kind of good stuff. Interview sort of creators like yourself, give them sort of like platform to talk.
Yeah, spotlight. That's
so
cool.
We did that. Yeah, exactly. And I've done that also on YouTube as well. So we did that. It was kind of released, I think, in the US. Not sure which channel it was for the company. And then we've done it on YouTube. And then, as I said, sort of worked on a couple of films. A couple of other things I can't quite talk about because of NDAs.
Of course.
Which are currently going. But they'll be revealed soon. And then, obviously, now working with ASAP Imagination, the comic company, and working on turning some of their awesome comic world into live action. So.
Exactly, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Let's jump into it. So we got The Conversation, of course, inspired by a lot of the great folks over there at ASAP, namely Hades. So how in the world did you guys end up hooking up in order to start creating something of this magnitude of a comic series that I myself have been a fan of for quite some time? How did this end up happening?
So it's kind of weird. Again, it's this one of those sort of Providence sort of Matrix moments, where it's like, so when I was working on the Man and Witch stuff, there was a Neverending Story event in London. A good friend of mine that works, she runs ThamesCon. They had this great event, and it was Neverending Fantasy Con, it was called, and it was all kind of Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and Neverending Story and all that kind of good stuff. And Tammy was there. Tammy Stronach was there representing her new film. So I was there filming the event and doing some kind of good promo stuff for them. And then one of our actors who's actually in The Conversation, he was there presenting. So again, we've kind of already got an established relationship, and he was dressed, he's quite a Shakespearean actor. He's very well known.
That's
here
cool.
In Christopher Donnelly for doing his Shakespeare. Yeah, very well. Lambda kind of teacher. So he was dressed full bard outfit. He had the hat and the kind of, the full outfit. And he was outside getting some fresh air, and he actually bumped into Hades, who just coincidentally kind of come along because he liked 80s fantasy stuff.
Yeah, that's his
And they
MO.
sort of struck up a conversation. Yeah, that's the one. So they just started talking, just kind of as two dudes do, and Kieran, you mentioned obviously the comics. Kieran kind of got involved through that, and then Kieran kind of then got me involved and said, "Well, actually, if you want to kind of do live action stuff, there's a guy inside that I work with. He's a director. He kind of has his own company. He kind of films stuff. You guys should meet." So Kieran did some voice acting for did Dead Knight on some kind of animated pieces. And then he sort of hooked me up with Hades. We kind of got chatting, and very off the bat, much like yourself, it was kind of this is a brother from another mother.
Yeah.
Definitely we would same age, same influences, same cartoons, same movies, all that kind of good stuff. So I was like, right, this is obviously meant to be. And then that was it. Once the conversation started flowing, pardon the pun, it kind of led into the conversation essentially.
That's awesome. And Hades has that type of infectious personality that just gets you roped in. Look, I've been working with that man for years now, and I'm just sitting like, he'll hit me up. People like, Trey, you won't believe this. I had an idea in the middle of the night. I had to tell you. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm up, so like let's do it. But that's really cool, and I love how happenstance that kind of happens when you're just in company of good creative people. To actually come together to try to create something unique and cool and beautiful, and especially for especially in your case for your studio to actually go elbow deep into the comic industry and finally able to cast that wider net. So this is a very, very beautiful and glorious opportunity. Now, Hades ain't gonna want me doing no type of spoiling. I know that for 100% true. But are you, because for me as a comic purist, are you taking the comic and just doing it scene for scene, to as for the adaptation, or are you taking a few creative liberties?
So great question. So basically, this is the great thing about what we're doing. We're not just taking anything that already pre-exists and turning that into like a live action version. This story is actually a self sort of sustained story.
Yes.
And this fits in between the comics. So this actually works as building a larger world rather than, we're just repeating the same thing.
Okay.
And it's all going to be canon too, which is great. So the good thing about, kind of doing this is Hades' kind of wider vision is that he wants to kind of do animation and live action as well as the comics. And audio books, all that kind of stuff.
He's made that very clear.
You'll be... He's not shy, as you said.
No.
But it's really, really interesting because we can now, we can add all these little bits in and, really build this world. And when we sort of first started, like, okay, where do we start? Because this is what kind of drew me in, was it's such a big world, a wealth of kind of characters. Where do we jump off from? And then we thought it would be a really good idea, rather than do what you normally do, like an origin story or anything like that. We're starting with a crossover straight away. So two characters who have never met in the world so far. From two different comic series, Dead of Night and then the Messiah comic. You've got Foe from the Messiah and then Dead of Night, Dead Knight from the Dead of Night. Yeah. It's about kind of them having a chance encounter and kind of what happens when they do meet. Are they friends? Are they foes? Pardon the pun. Yep. But what kind of happens
unaccepted.
That, and that's what the conversation's unaccepted. That's kind of what the story's about. And it's been very exciting for me as a filmmaker, kind of helping Hades to realize, taking these 2D characters and really fleshing them out in a 3D world.
Exactly.
To which end, we kind of have wonderful things like this.
See, golly, that looks amazing. That's really dope.
There's our helmet for the Dead Knight.
So, that's part of your design crew that end up making that helmet, or did you 3D print that? Like, how did that end up coming?
Yeah, so that's 3D printed from great sort of 3D artists that we have on side, and basically they've printed. So some of it's costume based, some of it's kind of been made, some of it's kind of been purchased. Those have been created completely from scratch. Eddie's got these great videos of it all kind of being made.
Of course he does.
Very behind the scenes man.
Of course he does.
There's going to be lots of filming behind the scenes when we're doing bits and bobs. And there's Foe. We have Foes too.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you actually have that physical mask. Because Laurie, I'm sure you've met her by now. Years ago, she made the paper mache version of it, and we all did like a bit for I think it was IG, and we all like made paper masks. We all wore it, and to actually see it physically like that warms my cold, dark heart. I tell you, that is amazing. I know right when she sees it, she's fired up. She's been trying to do that for years, Ben, years.
Oh, well, happy to oblige.
Yeah,
you got to see it.
That's so good.
So yeah, it's really exciting. Kind of, getting to see all this again. It was really good. We did a Comic-Con recently when we launched the Kickstarter.
Excellent.
We actually did it from a Comic-Con live event. So our actor, that was the first time he'd actually put the helmet on. So it was a big sort of moment for him, for Kieran, because he was like, just chomping at the bit. He's dying to get into the full suit. He's like, it's not every day you get to be, this kind of, vengeful knight. It's kind of great. So he was really chomping, like, oh, yeah, can I get the helmet? Can I do the helmet? I was like, okay, let's film it. Let's get it done. So
exactly.
There's some good stuff on ASAP Imagination's social media of Kieran donning the helmet for the first time.
Excellent.
It's a perfect fit, which is brilliant. So
excellent. and Ben, you beat me to the punch. Perfect segue. Talk a little bit about the Kickstarter. It as of filming, it has reached its goal of.
It has, yeah.
It has reached its goal, which is amazing, and we still have 16 days to go. So everybody, definitely, the links will be in the description section. Definitely support this project 110%. And just going through all the great stretch stuff, all the stuff is going to be freaking great. But I'd be remiss if I didn't even push the envelope a little here, Ben. Once production starts, do you have a tentative date on when this might be coming out?
So what, at the moment it's kind of all theoretical.
Of course,
but we're looking to shoot kind of June, sort of July time, and then obviously we've got kind of effects, and we'll have color grade and all that good stuff on there. So I think we're looking to kind of really hustle it out in probably around November time, November, December.
Okay.
I think that's what we're aiming for.
Okay, yeah, no, so, nothing in stone.
Put some real.
Yeah, nothing is
real hustle, because we want to get it out there. We know, again, everybody on the Kickstarter will be keen to kind of get their hands on it and kind of watch it. So, we really want to hustle and make sure that, we get it out there as soon as we can for you guys. Not too soon, obviously. You've got to let it cook. Make sure it's the best product it can be.
Oh, we got to let it cook now. We got some simmering to do.
Got to let it cook.
So at this point... go ahead, Ben, please.
No, sorry. Yeah, so no, it's just essentially that's where we're aiming for. But again, it's all still a bit theoretical at this point. But we'll touch wood and kind of everything goes the way it's been going. It'd be great. So we should be on track.
That's excellent. So, one final question in regards to the production. Where are you in production at this point, Ben? Are we still at the writing phase, or are we? And you said we're shooting in June, July, tentatively June, July. But where are we as far as today? Where are we in production?
Right, so as I say, we've got sort of casting down. That's pretty much done. We've got some other little sort of minor pieces that we're still sort of like fishing for. Script's pretty much good to go. We've got storyboards. The wonderful Mitch has kind of done some great storyboards for us. So we've got all those kind of good to go. Location scouting, we've kind of pretty much got our location, because again, it's sort of set around London. So we're looking at London and London type kind of areas for it to go in. Okay. So, we're kind of doing that. So we've kind of pretty much got our location done. Suits are currently in the works. So we've got most of the things like the helmets kind of done. We're just building, fleshing out the suit. Foe's pretty much done. So we've got his costume kind of good to go. It's just building some more parts and getting some more 3D prints, because they take their time.
Oh yes, they do.
So we're just sort of fleshing out his suit, because again, we got to make sure he kind of he has that big stature. We want to make sure, and Kieran, the guy playing him, was a big guy too. So we got to make sure he looks the part. So so we've basically got cast, pretty much locations are there. Got the kind of crew that we need. Costumes are currently being done, if not done. And that's it pretty much. I think that's we just kind of get our choreo down, get our two guys together and start, working out some, if they decide they're not friends, they might do some fight scenes, that kind of good stuff. So they kind of have to, flesh that out and make sure that kind of looks really good. So that's kind of where we are. So we're sort of in the final stages, definitely. And just getting ourselves prepped and ready for production.
That's awesome, man. Oh man. I'm excited, Ben. So this is really, really good, man. This is really good. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your company. I'm excited, definitely excited for Hades. Like he's been chomping at this bit for years. I'm really, really happy that you all found each other to start working on this. This is really, really great. I could not be more thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Thank you. Yeah, and like I said, once nearer the time, if you guys, you're happy to have us back on, we can come on and maybe drop some spoilers. We're in the process of just cutting together a little teaser trailer as well. So that should be coming out hopefully just after maybe this week, nice. Just to finish off with the final sort of days of the Kickstarter.
Tremendous.
Just to get kind of people excited and kind of show them a little bit, but not too much. Because I was always a fan. Again, I don't know about yourself, Dre. Like growing up, like watching films. Back in the day, kind of you look at T2 and some others, they would shoot stuff, purposely just for the trailer.
Yep.
And it wouldn't have any stuff from the film in it.
Yep.
Kind of T800 being built and all that kind of good stuff. And now, you see a lot of modern trailers, and they kind of give away the plot in the the trailer. Yeah, and you're like, no, that's no good. So we've shot stuff specifically just to kind of bring as a tease to get people kind of excited about this thing. So
that's old school,
it'll be really good. Now we're dropping that.
That's old school. I like that.
Well. Speaking of old school, we like it old school because we kind of, again, part of the Kickstarter that we've got, we've kind of doing, some physical media because, again, I like my physical media. I like my comics in hand. I like my DVDs. I've got VHS, that kind of good stuff. So we're going to have we've got a kind of DVD there ready to go.
That's awesome.
Of the conversation. So that's just a prop that would kind of rough look of what the final thing will look like. So we've got those, and then kicking it old school with the VHS.
I love it. I love it. I love the VHS.
All weathered. Yeah, weathered with the kind of the good stickers on there and stuff.
Course.
I know you guys, you don't really have sort of big cases in the US, did you? Did you
US,
have our
VHSs back in the day, back when they were producers, were about the size of like a traditional storybook graphic novel. It was like the cases were like this, and then and like we didn't really have a lot of play around space in there. But y'all's had the big old square. I don't know what you're putting in there. Big old. Look at the size of that monster.
Yeah, that's it. Look at that. Look at that beast.
That thing is huge.
So
that's awesome.
So we got that, and then again, another part of the Kickstarter is that we want to give people the opportunity to be in the film as well. So one of the things we come up with, in the world, there was a kind of the event that happened. You're probably already aware of, Dre, and then lots of people went missing. So part of the Kickstarter is that if you wanted to be part of the movie, actually in it yourself, we've got missing posters for people.
That's going to be so
and this
cool.
one's Bill from Bill and Ted. And it shows you, and you can have yourself added here, or you can have your mum or your aunt or your dog or your cat, whatever you want to do. Put their details in, and then in the intro of the film, as well as various points in the film, we'll show a kind of wall of the missing, and everyone that's kind of gone missing, unfortunately, will be there. There's a couple of little hints all the way through as well. Look out for some Easter eggs, maybe there might be some people in there. But anybody at home kind of watching, or your audience, could want to get be part of it. They could actually be in the film and see themselves in there.
That is awesome.
It'd be great.
Gee willikers. That is going to be fan freaking tastic. So Ben, first and foremost, I want to thank you so very much for coming on to my show and sharing all this great stuff, all the great work, your great origins, all that wonderful stuff with me today. Where can people reach you, find you on socials?
So socials, I'm at Bad Mosquito Films on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, all that good stuff, as well as ASAP Imagination, again at ASAP Imagination on all those platforms too. The Kickstarter obviously is available. There's links to the Kickstarter in our bios as well, so you can go on there and if people want to go and have a look, or they just want to share it, that kind of good stuff. badmosquitofilms.com is my website as well, so that's kind of got links to kind of people I've worked with and other little projects and my social media on there as well. So thank you very much for having me on, Dre. I really appreciate it, and and I hope we do you justice and kind of give you the best story that we can do for you.
I don't doubt that for one solitary second. It's gonna be pretty darn dope. So Ben, thank you so very much for coming on to the show. Now, everybody, now that we've all salivating all the greatness of Ben over there, let's talk about me. Who am I? Of course, I'm Dre the Brute Dams. Follow me on my dope social media platforms as well. I'm putting them right on my face. They're not there yet, but they will be. At TheBrute00 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Wait, that's not it. What am I saying? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I feel like being silly on TikTok. God, English is hard. And of course, you can always check out my comic, Trouble the Rhythm Within. There's always links in the description section below. The graphic novel is still available, and the new Trouble Rise of the Children is currently in production. So definitely check things out by the time the things start dropping there. And as always, you guys have been fan-freaking-tastic. This is the Indie Corner, and I will catch you all next time.